Hi, I'm Krista Campbell. Thank you for joining us today for Mobile GIS Transforms Operations at St. Johns County Utilities. So today I'm excited to welcome Tom Tibbetts. Tom is the Information Systems Coordinator at St. Johns County Water Utilities. St. John's has implemented several solutions that help them face challenges associated with dispersed and detached service areas, new development, high growth, expansion, and the acquisition of aging private utilities. In addition to using ESRI technology, Tom has worked with ESRI partners to achieve utility goals. He has a lot to talk about today. I hope you find it as interesting as I do. Before Tom gets started, we're going to hear from David. Most of you know David. He's our industry manager for water. He's going to provide an overview of ESRI solutions and how we work with industry partners. So I hope you enjoy the webinar. David?
Thank you, Krista. So as we get started here, if you had joined us last month, we talked about kind of this app explosion and what could be done with some of the mobile apps that we have, and I talked a bit about Collector and Navigator and such. But I wanted to kind of part two, if you will, brings in some of the partner solutions as well. We'll talk a little bit about that. But you'll find that Tom has done a lot with the entire ESRI ecosystem there at St. Johns County Utilities. So he has a great presentation. But before we get started with Tom, just wanted to kind of go over the ESRI ecosystem in terms of what we think of apps. And many of you really, have been doing this for a very long time. When we kind of talk about what's available to you, so to speak, there's a lot of things that you can do simply with ArcGIS in core, right? So many of you have been using desktop, and that's ArcMap and the new ArcGIS Pro, but also, server and online. So there's just lots of GIS functionality you can do with core. And of course we have the extensions, like Spatial Analyst, that extends and takes some of those basic functions that you've always had in GIS, but packages them up and extends them, as an extension to core. Many of you may or may not know that we also have very specific products. So something like ESRI Roads and Highways is a full-blown product that takes a bit of core and some extensions and wraps up an entire workflow and a full set of documentation that gives you a true end-to-end solution within a product offering. And something like ESRI Roads and Highways, it's like, well, why would you be mentioning that, Dave, in the water meetup? Well, actually, we get some interesting queries about roads and highways as it applies to water, because really it's our best linear referencing system management. The LRS, of course, is very useful in transportation, but a lot of water entities are saying, hey, could I use that roads and highways for water? So it's a rather interesting conversation that we get to have from products. But you've also, if you've been attending our meetups for quite some time, you definitely know about our solutions, which really then is it takes core, and some of them have extensions, but it really is just a configuration of what we call the platform that's, ArcGIS for water utilities, but the entire ArcGIS for, suite. We have it for local government, public safety, so on and so forth. So really there's a lot that you can just simply do with core. And then we also have lots of tools for the DIY, the do-it-yourselfers out there, that have been using Model Builder and Python to package up components of core to make, nice, quick little apps that many of these have been used for batch mode in the middle of the night processing, that sort of things. But we also have an entire SDK and set of with APIs that allow you to kind of custom build some of your own tools. And I want to take a moment to talk about Web App Builder and App Studio if you haven't seen those sorts of things. So Krista, I think actually, and then I'll get into partner solutions and what you should be using on Esri.com and partners.esri.com. But before we get in there, Krista, you have some polling questions?
I sure do. Let's go ahead and launch the first one. Have you used Web App Builder? Yes or no? Pretty easy one to answer. I appreciate you guys participating. So about 65% of you are saying no, you haven't used it.
Okay, next one.
All right, we're going to move on to App Studio. So have you used App Studio? It looks like a large majority of you have not used it.
I think we have one more.
You do. This one's going to ask you about partners. In what areas have you used ESRI partners? You can select more than one. All right, so we have a good showing for data collection, creation, and management. Like I said, you can pick more than one if you've used a partner to help you with these items. A good selection of CMMS and asset management.
Okay.
All right, we're going to go ahead and close the poll. All right, David, back to you.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great response. I mean, you know, and it's really not surprising, especially with the web app builder and app studios. Those are fairly new. And so, you know, you've seen our platform slide. And again, last month we kind of really focused on, you know, the apps for web and mobile devices, but really we're kind of, you know, extending. You know, when we start talking about core and even simple model builder, extends that entire application, but also then gets us, you know, to pick up the servers. So really the entire spectrum of the platform, so to speak, that, you know, where you can do application development, we have all sorts of tools to be able to do that. Now, so web app builder. Jumped a slide here. There we go. All right. So web app builder, as the survey said, many of you are starting to get start to work with this. This definitely allows you to create custom, I shouldn't say custom, they're configuration apps that sit right on top of your web map. Very easy to use. Within 15-20 minutes, you can develop a quick little application that does a very specific purpose. So it's a very quick tool to give you lightweight applications that run right in your browser. And then the more recent tool we have is the App Studio. That it's really one of these code once, you know, implement many sorts of things where you develop an application with more of the ESRI framework, and then you can post it to lots of different multiple operating systems and mobile devices. It allows you to just compile a code on whether it be an iOS or a Droid. So, and we're starting to see a lot of our partners start to put up applications with App Studio, because again, it offers the convenience of code once and use many. And so speaking of partners, hopefully you may have heard ESRI talk about our strong partner network. We have nearly 2,000 partners that build software on top of our software. And if you've attended various meetups, you'll also, you know, we've had partners present, we've had customers definitely talk about their partner implementation. So, and each one of these partners do what we call extend the platform. So they have very specific business processes, you know, problem solvers for you that help extend that GIS all the way into a very specific business workflow. So if you haven't gone to partners, .esri.com, I would encourage you. We have a directory there that allows you to search for the various 2,000 partners. It allows you to query based on industry or specific, even, you know, specific industry types, partner types. You see down the bottom hardware partners, and you even see something called the ArcGIS Marketplace, and that's relatively new as well. And if I had thought about it, I probably should have had a poll on the marketplace. But if you haven't gone to the ArcGIS Marketplace, again, it's right there off of. You can get to it from the partner page. But this is really dialed into ArcGIS Online. But it's partners that have that provide ArcGIS Online lightweight apps. You'll find data providers here. You'll find all sorts of different things in the marketplace, but these are folks that are really quickly go to market, that you can buy their services right off of ArcGIS Online, and it's all part of your ArcGIS Online organization that you can easily, you know, fuse these into your environment and give access to all the users that need to use those particular applications. And if you kind of take a look at utilities and communications, definitely that's, you know, where we're underwater under there. These various partners pop up. So I highly encourage you to, if you haven't gone to partners.esri.com, you can go take a look and see what partner solutions might be suitable to you. There's write-ups on their solutions on each of the partners. So again, I encourage you to visit partners.esri.com and also take a look at the marketplace. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised about all the different offerings that we have. So with that, though, I think I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Tom, and I want to give lots of time for Tom to talk to his various things, but I think we'll be generating quite a bit of Q&A, and so please stay tuned for that piece, just because that's, I think, part of our most significant learning moments is as we get questions from the audience and respond. That's really the nature of what these webinars are all about, is we seek to educate and have an honest dialogue with you folks out there about your business challenges and how ArcGIS can help serve those needs. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Tom.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Krista, for hosting this and giving us a chance to share ideas and thoughts. So as you mentioned, St. Johns County is a county that we have a few issues, and we went through an implementation phase to try and solve a lot of our challenges. And I'll be giving the presentation today. Part of my team is not in the room, but Carrie Thomas and Erica Kinchin, and have also helped on these along with support from our professional services. So introduce St. Johns County. We're in Northeast Florida. We're a coastal county. We do provide water, wastewater, and reclaim services. We're a growing small to mid-sized utility. I think if you look at the map on the right, the areas that are in dark are our service areas. The lighter tan are our growth areas that we'll serve. And you can see right away that you have a dispersed utility. We acquired aging commercial utilities up in the northeast portion of our county. We have a lot of coastline, a lot of water, and then we have interstate. So we become very dispersed, and it's a challenge for our utility. We have 19 treatment plants that we have to take care of, and lots of field crews. So the St. Johns County utility values a few things. We have water quality, of course, is first and foremost, and cost effectiveness. We're a very frugal county. And customer satisfaction is something that we always try to keep at the top of our list. Those values are challenged by a lot of the things that impact our county. We are one of the fastest growing counties in the country, typically based on percentage. As you can see in that map in the area, the blue areas are the areas that have development in them, while the yellow-green areas are areas that have approved development in them. So obviously that's a small portion of our service area that's going to face a lot of changes in the next 10 years. Not only is there a high growth rate, but there's that expansion. So when we do grow, it grows very quickly. On top of that, we've had to do consolidation. When we bought the aging utilities, we had to consolidate a lot of that infrastructure. A lot of it was aging infrastructure. Plus, we are an older utility. We are home to St. Augustine, St. Johns County is. So I like to say we have the oldest city, and we have the oldest houses in the United States and some of the newest houses in the United States. And in addition to that area, Florida faces a lot of regulation in how we use water use. We're moving towards IWRP, water resource planning, including reuse. And here you see 3 of our commissioners who opened up our brand new wastewater reclamation facility serving one of our expansion areas. So with those challenges, the utility had to continue to adapt and be able to provide those services and hold those key values. And given those challenges, I sat down and as I developed a plan for how to handle those, I did refer back to ESRI. I found this a very helpful tool, and that was looking at the utility business patterns of asset management, planning analysis, field mobility, operational awareness, and stakeholder engagement. And I held to that concept that if I didn't handle all of those, I wasn't doing the full, complete solution. So based on that, and within our utility, we did an internal review of our organization applications and functions and the platforms. We decided that for us, we needed to develop platforms that we could build solutions on. Our professional services were evolving. Our original projects were large waterfall-style projects with large assessment documents and needs requirements. Our Office of Management and Budget was moving us more towards flexible and annual budget plans that had to be held for that fiscal responsibility. And we've adapted our contractor structure through continuing service providers. We continue to work with the great contractors we had. We've just added a few more to it in order to do quicker turnarounds on projects. Essentially, if you've been following along, I feel like we are using more of the agile project management. We do our own internal assessments and management, and we contribute towards projects to make sure that they're functional when the keys are turned over to us, and that we're able to continue them as that happens. So with that challenge of the aging infrastructure and the population patterns and the technologies and the services, we identified seven of these projects. The first one was our Cityworks Enterprise Asset Management System, which we started 7 years ago and have fully implemented. Some of these have been started in the past 1 to 2 years, and some of them just this year as they move forward. But we felt that first one really showed the ability of technology to provide solutions within the water industry. And we identified a criticality assessment that was needed. And then we wanted to move towards the mobile platform. We do have older infrastructure, so we do have line breaks and boil water notices, and we needed to be able to handle emergency responses better than we had. We needed to look for technology for solutions, along with our hydraulic modeling and the GIS data quality and our fleet tracking. The big one is the enterprise asset management. That's the one we started with first. And I have a lot of slides here, and I'm going to breeze through some of these. I wanted to make sure the content was there for people who wanted to look up and refer some of these, but in reality is I'm going to try and go through some of these and do a few online demos instead. But obviously we wanted to do two things. We wanted to improve our preventative maintenance, and we wanted to improve our repair time for a lot of our infrastructure, and we needed to be able to track projects and costs. And to do that, we look towards the Cityworks asset management system. We're a very strong GIS county. Playing to our strengths, Cityworks is built on top of ArcGIS server, and it takes your asset management system and the database aspects and ties it to the GIS. Jones Evans and Associates helped us on this project, and we basically looked in the implementation to do a call center to the service requests, our work order management, also do inspections, and then also track our resources, our equipment, our materials, our infrastructure, and make sure we had that last end of it, that operational awareness, organizational awareness. And if you're familiar with the enterprise asset management, the GIS-centric ones, you have ArcGIS server on the right, but here's our call center. And so on April 20th, these are some of the calls that we were taking that day as they go from the office to the field. We also took advantage of the inspections. These are some that we're just adopting in the past 12 months, but here's an area where we have the TPC sawgrass, so it's a very sensitive business area. And knowing what our manhole infrastructures are like and trying to make sure that that can handle the capacity and that we are on top of those is important. And so in this particular situation, you see a form on the left for doing a field assessment of the manholes, and it applies values to it, and we even have scoring tied to those values so that we get metrics and numerics based on our inspections. Our bread and butter for Cityworks, though, started with work orders. That's where we track a lot of our infrastructure. Here you see a neighborhood that was built about 1.5 years ago, and you see a lift station. So our work orders on this one started 15 months ago with the opening of that lift station, and we've tracked all the work and maintenance and repairs done to that lift station during those 15 months. Not only helpful for maintaining what we have, but it's also knowing what new growth costs to us, because we're going to continue to be faced with new growth. Those work orders themselves go a step further because it's an asset management system, and they have the equipment, labor, and material. And within the field, the staff assigns the equipment that they use. They assign the time that was spent on it by whom, and any materials that came from our warehouse. And that material, this all together combines to provide us with the history and the cost savings. Our implementation is kind of unique because we did invest a lot into those storerooms, and we manage our all of our materials. We have a warehouse which would store over $1 million worth of supplies, and we track that from purchase to warehouse to the trucks to where it gets installed in the field, really giving us a huge insight towards a lot of our expenses. Our utility itself, when we did an internal assessment, we implemented Cityworks using mobile. So all of our field trucks are running with tough books and commercial Wi-Fi where we have good coverage, and we're able to run everything through the field. So that call center's service request goes directly to the field crews who can respond to it. The key value of that one, as you look to our org chart, which is not the biggest org chart in the world, there's 155 employees. You can see the natural pyramid schemes of an org chart, pyramid designs, but you can see our workflows are much more collaborative than that. This is a typical workflow for replacing a pump at a wastewater treatment plant. You can see as it goes from wastewater treatment over to our lift station crews, and as it goes to our asset management, our finances, and how all that information is available more dynamically and definitely through a better collaborative method and using mobile. And of course, hitting that organizational awareness, we make sure we report this information up. And as you can see, there's lots of benefits. We hit our objectives. We do about 13,000 work orders a year from 588 templates. Those call centers, about 100 a month. So it's hitting exactly what we needed it to do. Building beyond that, we know that these individual applications integrate into other applications. And not only was this just an AMS, but the AMS needs to tie into other things. So we were helped by Jones Edmonds, who came in and tied our AMS into two databases, our Customer Information System database and our Automated Meter database. From the customer information, now when you do a call to our county, first of all, it auto-updates our account feature classes using geoprocessing tools, pulling from the other database. It also uses the customer's billing information, so when they call to us and they're using the GIS information, that information is pulled from the Cogsdale billing database. Another integration they did is the same with the meters. Through geoprocessing, it auto-updates some of our meter information so that we have access to this live AMR information, also providing a lot of consumption information as we learn to use water more wisely. The second project that we did after that was our criticality assessment. We purchased 2 aging utilities from commercial utilities in Ponte Vedra, and we needed to get an assessment of what the maintenance and the rehabilitation was needed for that. We worked with W.K. Dixon, who came in and taught us a lot of the principles of condition assessments or criticality assessments, starting with where we see the criticality score is basically your infrastructure out in the field has a likelihood of failure and a consequence of failure. And by using that, you can identify your most at-risk infrastructure and focus on that infrastructure first, and also come with long-range capital plans to know where your spikes are. If we have a spike of development from 2000 to 2005, where maybe 10% of our infrastructure is built, and then we have a dip in that development, we're going to have the same variations in our maintenance and our rehabilitation. So the first step we did on that was just assess what was in the area, and basically we use our GIS features and our infrastructure to go through that. I think in my example here, focusing on the number of miles of mains and also the 2,800 manholes that were faced, that's a large task to stay on top of for 2,800 manholes in that area. The second step in this one was to utilize the attributes. Our likelihood of failure is really based on the physical condition of what it is, starting with age, material, and type, diameter, but it's also based on other things, such as if you have a manhole that's downstream from a pump station, you're going to have more deterioration in that manhole than you are in others. So we bring in other factors that go into that. We also looked at our consequence of failure. And if you have a water main that serves 10 customers and a water main that serves 50 customers, and they have the same condition, the one that serves 50 customers has a higher consequence of failure. So we looked at other factors such as a relationship to wetlands, relationship to roads, relationships to arterials. We also looked at the number of customers downstream. We also looked at other factors like our assisted living facilities that they serve, or government complexes, or large areas. The final result of that was all done through geoprocessing and models. Everything is processed within a GIS environment and then saved into our feature class. And we come up with that criticality score, which summarizes our low risk, moderate risk, high risk, and highest, most at-risk assets. That feature is all that information ties back into our GIS. So it was a successful project. It identified all that. We went through, we adapted ourselves to think more long-term. We also identified a capital plan to handle Ponte Vedra because of the aging infrastructure that's up there and the amount of rehabilitation that's required. We're moving forward with that capital plan, looking at funding options, getting approval for those, and then also when we have those, we have to be able to manage those funds to make sure that they go to the right areas and the most at-risk infrastructure is handled. And that's where I come into more of an integrated workflow. So we have a Cityworks system, we have a GIS system, we did this we did our criticality assessment. So within Cityworks, we will unselect everything, since I had already practiced this about 10 minutes ago. For everybody that's online, we're going to go to the beach and a golf course for the day. Just thought I'd add a little to it. So here we are up in Ponte Vedra. If you watch golf, there's the island green, hole number 17 in that corner. And there's the beach where none of us are today. And what we're going to do here, I mentioned we had 2,800 manholes in Ponte Vedra, and a manhole's lifespan can be anywhere from 25 to 35 years, so there's a lot to do with those. Well, within this environment, our enterprise asset management system, we still have access to those criticality scores. And the ones that don't have a criticality score are new construction, so I told you we are faced with that. And I'm just going to eliminate anything that was a moderate score and really focus at our most at-risk infrastructure. But you can see there's a large spike around that 290 area, so we do know when you look at your cycles, it's not an even cycle. So here's our most at-risk amount of infrastructure for just this one portion. And I'm able to take that criticality assessment, and I'm able to filter on that and look at my cost totals within Cityworks, which is running on ArcGIS server. And I've identified, I'm basically going to open up and analyze that, what they call analytics. And within here, I can see my individual manholes. I can see my work orders, my inspection history, my work order history, my cost history. I can look at the GIS attributes and update any of those that's needed. You can even look at my conditions. And here you can see we have our maintenance score is a preventative maintenance score, so it's good. And you can see these have preventative maintenance scores. We can also look at our condition scores, and these have condition scores, so I know I have inspections on these. I go up to here, and I see I don't have a condition score. So I can schedule right here inspections on those manholes. I know they're at risk, so they need to be assessed. Or I can create work orders and start to track my capital improvement projects. These are things we're starting to do with it, but I feel like all the tools are in place for us to do it. And that's that integrated application where everything comes together. And that is kind of the power that we have within it, that we're bringing this all together and making it more of a collaboration across our departments, from finance to engineering to operations, and the multiple divisions in operations, and our asset management and our asset recording. So let's go back to the presentation, and that's what the integrated workflow, that's the power of taking two silos and bringing them together. Around the same time as we started planning and moving forward with those, we knew we really wanted to start to take advantage of the mobile opportunities that were out there. We knew we wanted to keep an increased response time, and anytime there's unnecessary travel, that's not handling our response times the way we are. We wanted to further enable that collaboration and the ability to get things done without having to over-communicate up and down scales, respond to immediate needs, expand our customer service, and improve the field collection of what's out there. And that was focused on ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Server. And I was in the water utility, and I really didn't know what I was going to be publishing within those outside of our staff's access, and I'm very impressed within the past year how people have come to me with the questions that immediately took advantage of this platform. It was sort of I knew I had a handful of projects, but a lot of it was a leap of faith of going to the platform. And now that we're on that platform, each week or each month we come up with new things that we want to share, or we want to utilize through a mobile environment, or we want to manage through that mobile environment. Some of the obvious ones are the CIP application, putting our CIP applications out there, and the top one is available. If I didn't mention it, I know I didn't. If you go to sjcutilities.maps.arcgis.com, you can see our ArcGIS interface, and you'll have links to some of these applications. You also can download this PowerPoint straight from there. But we used the web app builder and created a slideshow. GIS Inc. came in and helped us a lot with this platform and customized that to do specialized tabs in that one. And we share that internally and also with our partners. An interesting approach is we spend a lot of time sharing our data to engineering firms and design firms, and instead of doing that, we're experimenting with publishing services specifically for them. So our meters utilize the towers throughout the county, and we know where our permitted growth is that hasn't been built out, so we created a map service and pushed that out there, and now our internal staff and our consulting staff are able to analyze where the tower should go based on where our projected growth is based on our approved developments. Not only does it do all that, but it saves us time from having to export it and saves us the expense of paying them to import it. And then there's the basic ones. We really like this viewer. Had ESRI on the back, but this is a very nice, simple viewer that makes it easy for people, such as my family, to be able to find out information about their utility based on typing an address. Or who types in an address anymore? They really hit that little circle with the target, and it goes on my location. So within one click, they're able to figure out the water quality reports, the utility service areas, the irrigation rules, and our water advisories. We're also using this to help with our constituent engagement. You know, here's a capital improvement project occurring in people's front yards, and we're utilizing that to let them know the status of it, how it appears, and really help keep them happy. And internally and with some of our vendors, we're moving towards the mobile platform because we want to follow the principle of any app, anytime, anyone, any device. But it basically take the same information and republish it so that people have more access to it, so they're more likely to use it. And tying that into this integrated workflow. So we have, if you're in the water industry, stormwater, water, or wastewater, you know that a lot of your infrastructure can be deteriorate underground. What's called inflow and infiltration in our systems, and that's where water seeps into our sewer pipes, and we end up having to treat it. We have a sewer treatment plant that was faced with a large amount of infiltration during storms. So we knew that there was something going on in our infrastructure. Now, the best way to find that out is to start internally. So we looked at our asset management, and we said, well, let's look at what's the age of that infrastructure. Now, okay, what's our maintenance issues out there? We didn't have any maintenance issues where our infrastructure was fine. So the second step, we looked at our GIS analysis. We tried to see if there was cross connections from storm sewers. We tried to find out where all our caps were. We, through GIS, tried to find out where a lot of this infiltration was coming. So we weren't getting inflow from deterioration, and inflow from that, and we weren't getting infiltration from that. So our next step on that one is in that bottom left-hand corner, and that's called smoke testing. And you basically blow smoke into the sewer pipes, and it will find those cracks, and it will come out of the ground, it'll come out of the manholes, it'll come out of the broken areas, and it will also come out of people's houses. So it's a pretty sensitive thing that we don't do that often in the county. And I'm proud to say that we went with an ArcGIS online tool and never had to make a series of PDF maps that had to be updated 3 times a day. We created a map service. We mailed that to over 1,000 customers. We had very few complaints, no complaints about the map. I believe the number might be more like about 1,600 customers. We also shared that map service with our contractor, with the fire department, and the sheriff's office, and we updated it daily. So our contractor was on the same page as us, and the fire rescue and sheriffs were able to take calls to their call center and see where exactly we were working in those areas each day through their shifts. At the end of the day, you know, the integration took one giant step beyond that. Normally a project like this, you'd get a report back, you look at the report and you go out and fix everything. We send our crews out with the Cityworks, with the field books and the Wi-Fi's, and as the smoke testing identified breaks in the pipes, we created work orders on that. So before this project was even a week old from being done, most of the repairs had been done in those areas. There were some private areas too that we were just readily easy to share with. That's that kind of integration. That's pretty powerful for us. That's where we took the step of going from getting some things done to getting everything done across the board. And we were happy with that. So we're going to go a step further. We have line breaks. You can see that. Hopefully you can see the video. I see some fun video.
I can see it pretty well.
This is a line break that we had very recently. We don't have that many, but each one is a sensitive situation to homeowners and businesses especially. And so I put my camera down and I got my feet wet and I went out there and we went through the valves and we started using devices. But this is something we identified. ESRI tools, ESRI has their applications and they have a network tracing application, and we wanted to implement that fully. We are currently nearing the final phase of our review, and when GIS Inc. finishes those reviews, we'll be rolling that out to our distribution crews with their changes in it. So what does it do? Again, I'll just break here. It's easier to show you than it is to do the slides. So here we have the advisory manager. It does a few series. One, it does a network trace. It can collect those points, but we're just going to integrate that with Cityworks because we already have a service request for that point. So the field crew has one tool they use, and it basically, I will set a water break at my favorite restaurant, which probably is not good luck, but we're doing it anyway. So here we are. There's a little one-road street, and here's the first place I ate when I moved back into St. Augustine when I was 8. And let's just say some silly customer ran into that hydrant and broke it. So our field crews will go out there. They're going to look at that break. They're going to fix it, but they also have to shut a valve and close off that water line. And every customer on that street has to get a notification that their water quality might be bad and they might need to boil. Well, how do they handle that? ESRI's tools right here will just basically do an isolation trace. Same thing we do from the desktop. We're able to extend that out into the field. I like it on laptops. Our crews have laptops, but I have run this from my phone pretty easily. And so you can see based on that break, it traces all the way down to the valve and stops, and it identified all of the customers on that street. You see some lots that don't have customers too because they're still on well. So it's pretty interesting from that aspect. And you can review each one of these. You can go through them. You can review the customers. But at the end of the day, that field crew gets to see all that. They can save all that. And then they can say that there was a break on the 25th. We expect it to be fixed by the 26th. It was unplanned. It told us the number of customers, valves, and hydrants. So actually, we can share this map service with fire rescue, and they're going to know the outage areas and features that we may integrate within our work order system instead. I love the config and code some, and we've been using most of the configurations on this with some slight coding to really tailor towards our internal procedures. That's it. That's what our crews do. Now we have a compliance manager, and here's his application, and you can come in here and go to Saltwater Cowboys, if I spelled it right. And you can see there's our outage area. So the field crews, within a few minutes, have identified the outage area. I can only guess how long it would take to describe this area and the number of phone calls to do it. And our compliance manager is now going to create a water advisory to the public. He's going to tell them that they need to boil their water if they need to, and all the rules involved in it. So he turns this outage area into what we call an advisory layer. We call it Code Red because we use a Code Red reverse 911 system. A couple of these clicks later, our compliance manager is going to be able to import his outage area, his advisory layer, into Code Red and allow it to do the reverse calls based on that geography. And so we see the red was the outage area. And you can see that it expanded the outage area to the parcels, which is pretty good. I can say at the end of the street, we don't have meters on these parcels, so we don't need to advise those areas. And so our compliance manager may decide to clip this one right here. And we custom built those tools. We didn't. I asked someone to custom build those tools. And so within ESRI, we take advantage of their ability to edit from the field. That's pretty nice, or from a desktop. And we're able to tailor, first of all, we tailor the first one of the parcels, but we can tailor the second one to modify those. And he can adjust those. He can extract it out to code red, and then he's done. That's our waterline break from the field. You know, you may want, we could trim off this tail end because this is an easement that goes out into the marsh. But that's where we went with that, and we're pretty happy. And at the end of the day, if you're at our site, which is again sjcutilities.maps.arcgis, the final version of this will allow the public to be able to see our advisories. And if we go in there, we can see a couple of the advisories that I've been messing around with today in these two neighborhoods, but there's the one that we just created. So there's the low pressure, and then in blue, there's the boil water notice, and a lot of the attributes that we'll be setting. So let's go back to the presentation. And that's what we just did. So there's your slides. It certainly is a scalable, flexible platform. And definitely, I like the cost with the customization. It's sustainable. It's definitely cost effective and integrates well. Some of the other projects on our list, we'll breeze through. We did a hydraulic modeling project. We needed to grasp what was going on of our water systems and our sewer systems and be able to design and plan, especially with the expansion and growth, and have a better idea of what was happening in the field. So we implemented InfoWater. It runs in-house on ArcGIS data within an ArcMap environment, and it's mostly handled by the engineering division. And you can see here we have a reuse or a reclaimed water system that they're able to model, look at its pressures. It ties in through a direct import of our data on a one-to-one, so we don't have them fully integrated, but we were able to get that out within a matter of months and then continue to build our models. And currently, we have 13 models for water, sewer, reuse, and well. And what do we do with that? You know, can we shut down the inlet beach water treatment plant for 2 weeks during the low flows? Earlier, when we looked at the stormwater infiltration that was shutting down our wastewater treatment plant, we can look at it from that hydraulic modeling standpoint and try and pinpoint where that information is coming from. So there's some of the scenarios within the slides. The last project we did is one I'm really excited about. However, it's because it's a GIS specific project. This is what we're doing for us. As we go through these, we have to identify areas to improve our data. We found gaps in our data, whether it was missing attributes that weren't needed. You know, connectivity wasn't something that we had been doing just a few years ago, so we needed to adopt ESRI's data reviewer, attribute assistant, and water utility editing toolbars and really get into some standards. And again, we have a vendor who's able to help us. Timmons has been working on us during the spring, coming up with those tools, relying on their expertise in this as they've been doing it and helping get our staff caught up to these tools that they've configured for us. And I'm probably as unfamiliar with these tools as anyone since we haven't been using them as of 6 months ago other than through the ESRI user conference and demonstrations. But of course, it identifies your features and your geometry and your attributes, and it helps, it not only flags them and identifies them, but there are also tools to help fix them quickly and easily and cycle through them. So I'm not spending a lot of staff time making these corrections. So there's the data reviewer. Attribute Assistant is just as powerful. It mostly is designed for how it fills in attributes where it does. And we like to keep a year and an install date just to make it easier for some of our people to analyze stuff. Well, once they type in the install date, the year is auto-filled. You can also see if you drop a fitting, it's going to adopt the diameters of the pipes that it's connected to. It also has some geometric controls. For example, if it's a cap, it can't have two diameters because it's an end. So it's pretty neat in Attribute Assistant. We're definitely adopting these so that we can stay ahead of the curve with them. And it also shortcuts our editing environment through that toolbar. Here you can see a service line which goes from the main to someone's house. And it's going to add all those features. It's going to add the water meter, the service line, the sampling station, and the tap, and join to the water mains. So it definitely shortcuts a lot of our editing environment. I've got stacks of as-built and plans that are ready for review, but these are the tools to help us come up with better workflows and come up with solutions for the next 5 years. instead of reacting to a lot of that. Finally, we do use an AVL, a fleet logistics application that tracks our fleet. It's mostly used in-house for just assessments. And then as we get used to that, we'll use that to do it more for response and put it in that mobile environment as one of the options to consider, or use it to track equipment use so that the staff doesn't have to track that equipment use and log it. So auto logging, it's pretty powerful. But basically, in conclusion, the mobile and technology really came through for us. It helped us solve a lot of our challenges. It's really shown us how technology is powerfully coming into water utilities, and how coming out of that recession, there was a lot of tools that were ready to be implemented. It's proven very effective, and the product served a wider range of utility. It's basically taken that very siloed organizational chart and the siloed application chart and the siloed functions and allowed us to interweave those for broader solutions and comprehensive solutions. So it's scalable. It solves the individual task, but it also solves the greater good of the utility. We are very appreciative of the professional services that have helped us do that. You know, our contracts are structured to be within 12-month cycles, and I think that whole concept of agile and buy-in, agile project management and buy-in is really very powerful with these platforms that we're seeing from ESRI and Cityworks and other technology. And that's it. We also know the utility is going to continue to be dynamic and evolve. So the concept of a platform, I could not say enough about it, because when someone walks in my door with a question, I have the tools in place to really build upon that and expand to serve that. And with that, I'm available for questions.
Thanks, Tom. That was a great presentation. I'm amazed at how much you guys have been doing. And just a little note, we are featuring Tom in our June ESRI Wastewater newsletter. So we have an article that Tom put together, and we're going to be publishing it. That newsletter is going to be out the first week of June. So watch for that, because this is all in writing. All right, so we do have quite a few questions that came in. This one might be a hard one, but Tom, can you talk about the buy-in? You talked about getting buy-in and getting everyone on board, and a couple of the questions are asking about Cityworks and the costs, and how did you put together a return on investment or a justification for implementing that over the time and then building on top of it?
That's a good question. St. Johns County doubles in population. I'm sorry, we increase in population every 10 years by about 50%. So a lot of our growth occurred in the late 90s and the early part of the millennium decade, and we went from paper or no records to straight to GIS. So we are a very GIS-centric county. We have a strong GIS implementation through a lot of our agencies. So the concept of going to a GIS-centric Cityworks was easy. The return on the investment, you know, we with a lot of this, we went from paper and phone calls to these tools. So I think not a lot of complex analysis as much as just a better understanding. I think if you look at our org chart and our structure, you can see during that recession how we were able to maintain very, very low staff levels while still handling growth and still handling a lot of the maintenance. So I think it's more anecdotal than it is formal reporting.
Yeah, we've had a lot of users of our software struggle with that as well, with the actual numerical return on investment. But of course, as you said, when you're out there and you're using it and you're facing the challenges, it's definitely easy to see. Okay, so we have some other questions, again, about implementing this technology and moving to field devices and working with field crews. And our audience wants to know, what kind of challenges did you face transforming your workflow from that paper or, you know, more traditional workflow into this technology, digital, app-focused workflow? And did you implement any kind of training, or how did you message to the employees, and how did they respond to the change?
Well, our first project was the Cityworks project, and that was a classic large, and it probably needed to be a large waterfall style project with a lot of upfront assessments, meetings, feedback, and planning. I joined the utility almost 3 years ago. I've been with the main office here for 17 years, so I'm very familiar with the county, but a lot of that I didn't do any of the work. I give credit to Carrie Thomas, Karen Fullerton, Amy Miller, and other people who were doing that with Jones Edmonds. However, even with all that, as it's implementing, you're still given hurdles, you're still given people that they may have wanted to change, but they don't know how to do the transition. And if they're trying to learn the software and it's a little more of a struggle than they expected, they may go straight back to refusing to change or wanting to not change. So we stay on top of it. We try and connect with our users. We try to be very responsive when they ask for something and try and take away the frustration that's with it. I would pretty much guarantee nobody in the utility wants to go back to a paper system of trying to write down all of that information. Just thinking about their inventory and how they track their expenses, which is required, I would guarantee it would double all of their projects and they'd have scraps of paper everywhere. However, helping them transition to that is where we invest our time, and we do that. So kind of lost track of the question on there. Let me know if I didn't answer it, but that's...
I think you covered it. Most of
Yeah.
our customers that I've talked to in the utilities I've worked at, it's pretty much the same. It's difficult, and some people pick it up faster than others, and it's definitely a transition, but worth the pain.
Yeah. And
So,
in this same period of the past 8 years, our org chart's changing, and people are allowed to retire. And when people transition, people move on. So having a dynamic information system has helped the changes in our staff too.
okay, so several of the questions coming in are around Cityworks and ESRI. So there's a little confusion about what's ESRI and what's Cityworks in the examples that you were showing and in the web apps that you demoed during the webinar. So do you want to try to tackle that?
Sure. Cityworks is a business partner of ESRI, and they've built their entire asset management system that I just showed you on top of ESRI's platform. So it's a true GIS-centric. All the records most of the records within Cityworks are built straight within geodatabases or related tables for geodatabases, and then some of the inspections and some of those will just be independent features, but they use, much like ESRI has an object ID, Cityworks enforces what's called a facility ID for tracking a lot of that. So we don't have to synchronize our systems behind the scenes or anything. So the map on the right that we had seen was just an ESRI map service. So we have ArcGIS server running, and it publishes its map services, and those services allow direct edits to the geodatabase. And Cityworks really controls the interface on that.
Great, thank you. So the GIS, the ESRI software, is the system of record. It has all your attributes and the attribute information in it, and then Cityworks pulls from that. And so a lot of what they were seeing was the Cityworks interface pulling the information from the GIS, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. Another question is surrounding your field crews. So now that you have these apps in place and your field crews are out in the field working, what happens when the field crews are out there and they notice that something's different from what their GIS is showing them? Maybe it's in a different location, or one of the attributes is incorrect, or maybe if they need to add a new construction, do you have tools or apps in place for that?
Yes, yeah. What's interesting about a GIS-centric work order system, say someone's been told to exercise a valve or work on a water meter, if that water meter is not out there and they do a work order, it's unattached. So at that point, they should be making a request to our staff. And it's almost as if to add that feature to our GIS. So it's almost like it's QC'd in the field by the work orders system. That being said, we still do have gaps. The last line break I showed, there was a valve in the field that wasn't in our system. So as we go to the new version of Cityworks, we're going to increase our training and increase the number of tools that staff have access to, such as a redline tool. You know, I weighed the concept of ESRI's collector or even ESRI's survey 123 to help get information back in. But the redline tool is there, and they can task a work order to us. And then areas, we mostly rely on as-built, but as we start to use the data for more and more, we'll probably have to reinvest into collecting some field features. But the crews do a good job of giving us feedback on these. And now that you have a line break tool that's running through valves, it should continue to give us better feedback. So having that relationship with the field crews is very, very important to us.
Thanks, Tom. We're almost out of time, but David's flagging me down. He actually has a question for you and wanted to take a minute. So, David?
Yeah, so thanks, Krista. You know, it's always, again, important to have our attendees or listeners out there get their questions answered. And as Krista said, they're all going to be documented. We're going to have a Q&A posted. But yeah, so Tom, I mean, excellent presentation. I have 15 questions to ask you. No,
He laughs
of them.
like kidding, but he's not.
So we don't have the time for that. So you know, from the presentation, I talk a lot about, you know, GIS, and we always talk about the power of where because it's GIS, but I find many times when folks use GIS in their asset management programs, it's really the power of why. You know, location helps you answer the question, why are things happening? You know, that causal relationship, and you mentioned several times how you were using GIS to understand criticality. So, you know, excellent points to make there. Actually, I've you know, a couple of questions, but I think, you know, you showed no less than 5, you know, ESRI partners, and you had some local entities that help you with very specific asset management implementations. But you know, what's your criteria? And this might be a loaded question, but what has been your most important criteria for selecting, you know, a given partner? Has it been there? Is it always price? Is it the fact that they're part of the ESRI ecosystem? What's been some of your criteria for selecting partners?
The firms that have helped us, the professional services firms, are part of our continuing services contract. So we have formal requests for qualifications, and through those we selected 5 agencies to help us. It's actually parallels very similar to what our surveying office and our engineering offices use. Instead of doing one large product, they usually have a few firms through that qualifications that are available to help. So you have the RFQ process for those. The software selection has been led, you know, Cityworks especially, through the RFQ process. ESRI, we go back, the county itself is ESRI customer 190, so I couldn't tell you how we selected that software. But it was probably in the early 90s.
Yeah, that was some time ago if they're 190.
So, you know, ESRI products have been there for us. CompassCom, you have integration with Cityworks, makes it a value-added product. So through the larger selections, we'll do requests for qualifications. Through the continuing service providers, the similar thing. And obviously cost cannot play into professional services as much as just having a good idea of what we're trying to accomplish and finding a product or that does that.
Great, thank you. I'm sure you'll be getting lots of questions, you know, on how St. John's does that. Again, you've proven yourselves very successful in managing that whole aspect. So, great presentation, and I'll forgo my other 14 questions, and we'll talk at the UC maybe. But I'll turn it back over to Krista.
Thanks, David. I was wondering if I was going to have to just cut you off, but you did a good job. Tom, we really appreciate it. I loved your webinar. Hopefully the attendees loved it as much as I did. And I'm looking forward to our newsletter coming out, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at our future events. Thank you for doing the webinar, and I hope everyone joins us next month.